Okay, before we get into this video about what the heck happened at Egghead Island last night, I just want to document something really quick here. See, there's this sort of phenomenon that happens in my life every once in a while. Has anybody ever had a dream about being at work? So you have your job, which you're working like all week, and then sometimes you'll have a dream about being at work. Okay, well, that happens to me too, except this is my job. I talk about One Piece for a living. So every once in a while, I will have a dream where I'm making a video about stuff in the story that's not actually happening, or I'll have a dream about reading the One Piece spoilers for the next chapter, and it'll be a bunch of nonsense. It's like, in the next chapter, Luffy becomes a giraffe. It's like, wait, what? So Kaku dies and Luffy gets the giraffe fruit? Like, okay. Like, I guess so. So, I had a dream last night about that, and it was actually something similar to that. Magellan died. Like, it was off camera. It was, like, off screen. Like, somebody just mentioned, like, I think it was, like, Sengoku or one of the Marines, like, oh, yeah, Magellan is dead now. And the Doku no Mi, the poison fruit, was given to Doll. So Doll now has the power of the poison fruit, of the venom fruit, which... honestly, I thank my subconscious for that, because that fits her very well. You can see Doll with, like, the venom fruit. I like you, Magellan. I don't want Magellan to die, but if Magellan has to die so Doll, you know, the BDSM Dami Mommy can get the power of, like, poison goo just oozing off of her, I'm all right with that. I'm okay. I'll make that trade. I was like, all right. So anyway, that was that. Just wanted to document that. Maybe it'll come up. Okay. So yes, today's video, we're going to be talking about what happened on Egghead, because we had a little bit of a time skip there while we cut away to see what Shanks was doing, and, Sabo reuniting with Dragon and Ivankov and explaining the events of the Reverie, and then everything happening on Hachinosu. We cut back to Egghead, and it's the following day. So I don't really know the exact timeline, like the time of day all this stuff was happening. So the last time we saw the Straw Hats before we cut away, when York was, making herself known as, like, I'm the traitor, ha ha ha, I was the one behind it all the entire time. I'm not really sure what time of day that was occurring. Was that at, like, sunset? I mean, it'll become a lot more apparent in the anime, and I'm sure the anime notes will be like, okay, make sure to show this scene at sunset, or this scene in the evening, because effectively we are cutting to the next day at, like, lunchtime, last chapter, when all of the Straw Hats, except for Robin, we didn't see Robin, that's why she's all the way off over there, except for her, we saw all the Straw Hats gathered in the room in the Labosphere, and Zoro was holding Enma to York's throat, and then Usopp was holding the Den Mushi. So you can understand that the call was like, hey, you're going to call the Gorosei, and you're going to, just not say anything about us and let them talk and, like, explain everything, and then we can make ourselves known to figure out what's all going on here, okay? So the Straw Hats won, which everybody could assume that, given the fact that they're the Straw Hats. I mean, did anybody seriously think, like, this point in the story was where the Straw Hats were going to get defeated? So I like how Oda played with that a little bit. He was like, look, we all know the Straw Hats are eventually going to win the day, but I'm just going to skip to the end to make you kind of be like, whoa, what happened? And then I'll go back and reveal it later. Honestly, okay, I am like 99% sure that, Oda will reveal this in a flashback, like what happened at Egghead the previous night. But if he never does, I'd be like, okay, I mean, like, that makes sense too. We know that the Straw Hats are a Yonko crew now. They're not going to be bested by York, okay? Even with York and all this prep time that she had and organizing the Seraphim and everything like that, and this massive, like, subterfuge that York was utilizing here, pretending to be just like, oh, I'm just one of the Vegapunks back here. Yeah, don't look at me. I'm not suspicious in the slightest. Even with all that going to her advantage, she can still not just best a Yonko crew that easily. And dude, I love the way the Straw Hats were shown in that last panel in chapter 1089, They look so chill. Like, they just, they've defeated, York, and they've bested, the Seraphim and everything like that. They clearly had to have. But it's not just that. It's just like, yeah, we're a Yonko crew now. You sort of got that impression. Like, Usopp had his glasses on, and he's holding up the Den Den Mushi, and he's just like, yeah, we're doing this. Even Nami is, like, super confident. She's got her little bubble pistol, and she's like, so that's the way things are going on here. Like, this is a call that they are getting direct from the Gorosei, the leaders of the world. They don't know Eam exists yet, okay? So for the Straw Hats having, like, this conversation, like, this is probably the first time any of them are hearing the voices of a Gorosei, all of the Gorosei together. I guess Saint J. Garcia is listening in, but he's not talking, so it's the other four Gorosei. But still, like, they're listening to the, like, literally the rulers of the world government, the rulers of the world, and they're so chill with it. They're so just, like, in charge with it. Like, okay, we see where this is going. The Gorosei, huh? Now, like, obviously, Luffy gives no shits. You know, Luffy's over there eating a piece of mutton or turkey or whatever, and he's just like, what? Huh? Okay, we doing this? All right. So Luffy doesn't really care, but the fact, you know, Usopp understands, Nami understands, they are talking to the rulers of the world, and they're kind of at a level now where they're just like, you know what? Sure, we can challenge these people. We're the Straw Hat Pirates. We are emperors of the sea, damn it. Okay? Let's break this down. What happened? Okay. Well, I think honestly, like, and I threw this out in the review, but this is the easiest explanation. York herself stated she is not very powerful, okay? She's not like, you know, out of all of the Vegapunks, I don't even think she's the strongest. In terms of, like, all the Vegapunks, like, physical power, probably Atlas is the strongest, right? Like, York is not some kind of, like, special, like, oh, I was actually the strongest Vegapunk the entire time. No, she's not, and she even admits this, okay? And so the idea is, like, if it's a one-on-one fight between York and Zoro, or even, like, York and Nami, you know, York is like, yeah, I'm probably going to lose that, okay? So with that being said, last time we saw everybody, York and Stella were down in the basement lab, in the old Devil Fruit Research Laboratory, and York was there explaining the whole idea. You know, she shot Shaka, and then she's there talking to Stella about, like, you know, her master plan and all that. And then meanwhile, Robin, Atlas, and Chopper were heading towards that lab. So honestly, like, they could have just shown up in the lab, and York could be like, oh, you weren't supposed to be here yet. And then, you know, Robin could just, like, not even Demonio. Like, she doesn't even need to go that far. Robin could just make two giant arms to grab York and just, like, reverse suplex and bash her head against the ground, and then boom, she's taken care of. Chopper could have went Monster Point. Chopper Monster Point could have easily dealt with York. I don't really see any reason why it couldn't. Atlas was there. Even Atlas against York in a straight-up brawl, I'm putting money on Atlas on that one. They're, like, comparable size. You know, they're the two largest out of the Vegapunks, okay? So, you know, in any regard there, the whole reason York was so successful in her plot was because she had the Seraphim, right? Well, if the Seraphim aren't there in the old Devil Fruit lab to help her, and if she's defeated and if she commands them, there's really not much they can do here, okay? So we had S Shark was fighting against Sanji. S Bear was currently in battle with Luffy and Lucci in the lab in the control room. S Hawk decided to leave the lab and was being chased after by Zoro and Kaku. And then S Snake had just finished petrifying everybody and stomping on Pythagoras' head, and he blew up. And Frankie was there, like, 90% petrified, right? So there was a situation with that, sure. I guess S Snake could have been headed towards the underground Devil Fruit lab. I guess that could have happened. But honestly speaking, like, if they were quick enough, if Robin and Chopper and Atlas were quick enough at just dispatching York, and just, like, you know, Robin could just have her in, like, a headlock or whatever and just be like, tell us everything. You are going to tell us everything. York doesn't seem like somebody that would be very, like, well-versed in, like, interrogation or like, being able, like, I'm not telling you anything. You'll have to pry it from my cold dead. You know, nothing like that. York would probably sing like a canary. York would probably immediately say everything. And she kind of already did. She kind of already explained everything to Vegapunk over there, right? So Vegapunk would know. He's like, she's the one behind find everything, Quasar. Stop her, please, Straw Hats. You know, it would be something like that. Also, there's all the Cypher Pole agents that are in the prison, too, starving to death. It's actually a good thing Chopper is heading down with them, so Chopper could, like, help them out, too. Because, you know, they're government agents. Sure, they don't deserve that, like, fate to, like, starve to death, you know. So Chopper can help them out. He could help the Stella out after they release him. But honestly, it could have been a situation so simple of just defeating York. She explains everything, and then it's just like, okay, you're gonna, even if S-Snake showed up, because here's the thing, there's another angle with this where the Straw Hats did just eventually overcome the Seraphim, which is very, very plausible. Okay, like in a straight up long prolonged fight between S-Bear, the Kuma Seraphim, Luffy and Lucci. Okay, eventually Luffy and Lucci are going to win. Eventually Luffy's just going to have enough, go Gear 5th. Lucci could, like, fight against S-Bear, get to the point where the flames go out, and then Luffy just, boom! Honestly, I don't even think Luffy would have to go Gear 5th. You know, if it's a thing like that, or even if Luffy distracts S-Bear long enough for the flames to go out, Lucci will take advantage of that. He'll go to his awakening and just slice him down. So, that could happen. Zoro Kaku against S-Hawk, once again, it would be a long fight. It would be a little bit of a struggle, but I think eventually Zoro would overcome, okay? And remember, the Seraphim are not at their strongest level yet. They're still kids, okay? So they're going to eventually get to a level where they might be like, okay, this is going to be a serious threat here. I mean, S-Hawk might get to the level where he's comparable, if not greater than Mihawk. He's just not at that level yet, right? Sanji's dealing with S-Shark. I think that's gonna be fine. Like, eventually Sanji will just pummel Jinbei's Seraphim into the ground, into the point he won't be able to really move anymore, okay? So it's very possible that, yeah, that could happen. However, the only thing with that is they clearly, they might have overcome some of the Seraphim with physical force, but S-Snake would have had to actively chosen or been commanded to depetrify everybody, because in the last chapter we saw Usopp and Frankie depetrified. Okay, I'm assuming Lilith is as well, even though we didn't see her in the last chapter. In that scenario, like, I don't think the Seraphim, because of the way they're programmed, I don't think that they would respond to threats very well. Like, they have to be given an order. So, like, for example, like, let's say Zoro was fighting against S-Snake, and, like, was clearly, like Zoro's gonna win the fight, and then Zoro holds a sword to S-Snake, and is just like, hey, you're gonna use your powers to depetrify all my friends, or I'm just gonna, like, cut your head off, essentially. Would S-Snake respond to that with, like, oh no, please, I'll release your friends, I don't want to die, or would S-Snake be like, no, I'm not programmed for that, and just like, okay, so I would feel like that would be the more likely outcome, because they are programmed that way to only listen to orders. They do have their own personalities, they're capable of speech and whatnot, but I think there is maybe some kind of, like, lockout in their brains where they're not allowed to just do things, you know, by if someone gives them an order, even if it's at threat of, like, termination, you know, it's like this unit will terminate, then I cannot, you know, I cannot obey your orders because you do not have a command chip, I choose termination, you know, it's like something like that. So yeah, in that scenario, it makes the most sense that, yeah, maybe S-Shark, S-Bear, and S-Hawk would have been taken care of, maybe defeated by the Straw Hats and the Cypher Pole and everything, but when it came to S-Snake, you know, York had to literally give her an order. Now, York does care about her own well-being. York is concerned with her own mortality and everything like that. Like, she doesn't want to die. In the last chapter, we saw that pretty clearly. Like, she was bawling her eyes out, like, please save me from the Straw Hats. They're insane. I don't want to die here, God. You know? So, York is like that, and if she's the one commanding S-Snake, then we could easily have a situation where it's like, hey, tell her to depetrify all of our friends. And, like, York's like, yep, sure, cool, I'll do that. S-Snake, depetrify everybody, please. You know, it's like, that's how that goes, right? Also, in the last chapter, interestingly enough, I was looking at each of the characters in that final panel, and a lot of them were, like, scuffed up, you know, showed signs of, like, battle damage. Not really maybe necessarily battle damage, like severe injuries, but, like, they were scuffed and, like, covered in dirt and dust and maybe bruised up a little bit. Like, they had been been in a fight, okay? The people that showed this sort of battle damage were Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Usopp, Sanji, Lucci, York herself, obviously, the Stella, although that's not really so much from, like, being in a battle. Like, he's like, oh, it's time for old man Vegapunk to fight Quasar. I'll use my fisticuffs against you. You know, no, it's just that he was beaten up and thrown into a jail cell, so he was a little banged up, too. And then Brook. Brook was a little bit hard to tell because he's Brook, but his clothing was kind of scuffed, okay? There were 3 characters, from what I could tell, that were not scuffed at all. Like, they didn't really show any indication that they were in a battle overnight, okay? Jinbei, I don't think so. I mean, go look at Jinbei. He's in the background a little bit munching on a burger, but I really didn't see any sign that, like, Jinbei had been in a fight. And sure enough, last time we saw Jinbei, he was with Stussy, and they were heading to an unknown location. So they might have been going to a location that was completely separate. They might have been going somewhere else, okay? And then we had Bonnie herself, Jewelry Bonnie was there, and she had no signs of damage at all. So it could have been the situation where Bonnie spent the whole night in the paw room, you know, awash in Kuma's memories. And then after everything was said and done, after York had been captured by the Straw Hats and detained, after all the Seraphim were, like, in safe mode or whatever, like, they're not attacking anybody anymore, then they're like, okay, now that everything is taken care of, now we need to find Bonnie. And then they find her and be like, hey, Bonnie, we're having brunch upstairs. You want to come? And Bonnie's like, okay. And then they go upstairs and give her pizza. Okay, like, we're having a pizza party upstairs. You want to come? And just like, I do. You know, it's just like, okay, so I'm going to need some pizza after this, okay? So Bonnie might have not have been involved in, like, a serious, long, dragged-out fight, but she still could have, like, saved somebody, you know? Like, we could have had a situation maybe where, like, Zoro and Kaku were fighting against S-Hawk, and they're like, oh, we got to go to other places. We got to help out the other Straw Hats. There's problems. And then, yeah, but S-Hawk is really strong. And then Bonnie shows up out of nowhere, doesn't really fight, but then, you know, gets a surprise attack and uses that timely thrust on S-Hawk and turns him into a baby. So it's like a Mihawk baby. Would that work, though? Would Bonnie's ability work on the Seraphim? Because they're, like, you know, artificial beings. They're like clones, kind of. Maybe. I don't know if it would work that way. But, like, anyway, yeah. Like, S-Hawk's about to, like, slice up everybody or slice up the lab. And he's like, timely thrust. And just, psh, baby Mihawk. And he's like, wah! And he's like, you can't do anything. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, that works. And then Zoro and, you know, Kaku could go off and, like, save somebody else or something like that. Like Bonnie could have done that. Maybe if York was about to give an order or something, York is, like, gets freed and is like, oh, Seraphim, I want you to all... And then, like, at that moment, Bonnie, like, uses her powers and turns York into a baby. Although, I guess Vegapunk was able to speak when he was a baby because he had the brain fruit, which I guess all the other Vegapunks do as well because they're connected. So I guess that probably wouldn't work too well. But you know what I mean? Like, Bonnie might have, like, showed up at the last minute and been like, bonk, you know, use her powers, and that could have saved the day. Or she could have just been in the paw room all night, and then they just got her out later, okay? But she clearly wasn't involved in a long, dragged-out fight. Also, Chopper. Chopper's way in the distance, so we didn't really get a good look at him. I actually thought it was Edison for a little bit there. But Chopper didn't really have any signs of, like, battle damage either, from what I could tell, okay? And so Chopper was involved in that same group. But keep in mind, we did not see Robin at the end of the last chapter. We also did not see Atlas. So that group, the only person from that group that went down into the lab, or were heading to the lab, was Chopper. And Chopper didn't seem to be injured at all. So maybe they were able to solve the problem without even getting into a fight, right? So on that note, the people that are missing from this room, Lucci was there as well with Hattori, right? So we don't know where Stussy, Kaku, or Robin are as, like, the main cast here of Egghead. We also don't see any of the Seraphim in the last chapter, and we also don't see any of the other Vegapunks other than the Stella, the main body, and York herself, who's being detained and making the call to Gorosei, okay? So they're off somewhere else. Now, let's tackle the Vegapunks first, because a lot of them were out of commission. So Shaka was shot in the head, and Pythagoras was stepped on. Those are the ones that had the most heavy damage, okay? Where Shaka was really, like, obliterated, and Pythagoras, I mean, there might not be a lot of pieces of him left, okay? So that's heavy damage. If they could be repaired, they might be in an operating table right now. Or maybe they have to get, like, whole new bodies. I would imagine, like, you know, Pythagoras especially is a robot. I guess maybe the way that Atlas was speaking about, even the ones that looked human, perhaps they could come off an assembly line. It might be a situation where, like, yeah, Shaka's body was completely destroyed. His, like, computer that, like, housed his, like, brain and everything was completely obliterated. It's okay. There's a backup copy of it in Punk Records. We just have to wait for it to download into a new body. And I'm actually really excited for that because I want to see Shaka's new body have the other helmet from Daft Punk. So there's the two dudes that do Daft Punk. Well, actually, I think only one does it now. I think they basically split up and one of them blew up in that one video. Remember? But the point is, like, we have the other dude show up, like another body of Shaka, and he's wearing the other helmet. That would be cool. So it's like not even just changing out the helmet, it's just another body with Shaka's information like downloaded into him, okay? And then maybe the same thing with Pythagoras as well, like a new body for Pythagoras. Then we have the Vegapunk that was like kind of injured, but not like as severely, and that's Edison. Edison was damaged a little bit by S-Shark, I think, but like nothing to the point where his body was like destroyed, so they might be able just to repair him. And then we have the other ones that didn't seem to have any real serious damage. Lilith was petrified, but if you just de-petrify her, she would be fine. Atlas, you know, she had her head damaged by Lucci, but they fixed that, and we didn't see her ever since then, so I'm assuming she's still okay. And then York herself, she seemed a little scuffed up from the fight, but she didn't seem like severely damaged, okay? So that's the situation with the Vegapunks. There might even be an automatic system for that. There might even be like an automatic repair system. By the way, also, yeah, Vegapunk, the main Stella Vegapunk, was in the room with them. And he didn't seem very concerned about like, oh, Quasar, I gotta repair my other bodies, you know, so there might be an automatic thing like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. We got a new, every once in a while, one of the Vegapunks gets crushed by a giant boulder. It's something that happens. We have an automatic repair system over there. Shaka will come off the assembly line. Pythagoras will come off the assembly line. Edison was repaired already. It didn't take really hard to repair him. And then Lilith and Atlas are fine. So there's no reason for Vegapunk to be worried, okay? So then we have the Seraphim, which if they got them on their side or commanded them, you know, got them transferred back over to the correct, maybe Vegapunk tweaked the command structure a little bit, so maybe only he could give orders, like his main body could give orders, or he locked York out or something like that for right now. I'm assuming he could have done that. But yeah, they had to have S-Snake on their side in order to de-petrify everybody. Even if they were to, like, I don't think they would have done this, but even if they were to straight up just destroy S-Snake, you know, like, just like, you know, Frankie fires a laser and just like incinerates S-Snake, I still don't think the effects of the Love Fruit would dissipate. From the situation that we had with Boa and Blackbeard, her explaining her powers, like, dude, even if you kill me, they're going to stay petrified. Even if you take my powers, you can't unpetrify them. The only way, and that's the reason why the Love Fruit is so dangerous, the only way to unpetrify someone is for the person that petrified them to depetrify them. That is the only way from what we understand so far, okay? So the Seraphim, if Frankie's there unpetrified and Usopp's unpetrified, S-Snake is on their side, which if S-Snake is on their side, it wouldn't make any sense for the other Seraphim not to be. So they're all off in various parts of the lab, and they seem to be okay. Or maybe they just turned them off. Maybe they were like, you know what? We don't even want to deal with this again. I'm just gonna turn off the Seraphim Quasar. Just put them in lockout mode for right now and just worry about that later. And then the other Seraphim, like S Flamingo and S Bat and S Crocodile, they're off in other parts of the world. Dealing with the situations of the rebellion, so they're not going to be involved here, right? Then we get to Stussy and Kaku, the members of Cypherpole, and then Robin. I would assume they are together. Either that or, okay, if there's any member of this group that would just be off on their own, exploring the lab or doing something on their own, I would think it would be Robin, because Vegapunk mentioned, like, all that information at O'Hara. I was able to, like, you know, I went to Elbaf and I met the giant. I met Saul, and, you know, I was able to copy the books into my brain, which means all of the information and documentation from O'Hara was in Vegapunk's brain, which was then uploaded to Punk Records. So Robin, after everything was said and done, and after she had a quick bite to eat, Robin might be like, hey, Vegapunk, I want to look through some of that information that was at O'Hara. I want to look through some of that stuff. And Vegapunk's like, oh, sure, Quasar. Just head over to the terminal and you can access Punk Records, and here's the password and whatever. You know, the password is Quasar. And just like, of course it is. Of course it is. The password is Vegapunk. It's just like, oh, wow. It's like, okay, this is the greatest scientist in the world. What's his password to protect everything? Vegapunk. But there's a capital V. That's where they get you. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, Robin might be there right now, like just researching everything, going through all the documentation at O'Hara, because there might have been stuff in there she might have not have read, you know what I mean, or not have like been able to read when she was there. She was a kid when she was on O'Hara, and you get the impression that Clover did not tell her everything, you know, did not like let her just, you know, read every piece of information in the lab and all that kind of stuff. So or in the tree of knowledge. So there might might have been information there that Robin was never privy to, okay? Now, with Stussy and Kaku, if they're not with Robin, they're just together. They're hanging out. And so I don't know about that one. I mean, Stussy is a clone, so I don't know. She might be doing some stuff that's related to her being a clone. Like, I don't know, like... I'm honestly picturing a scene here where Stussy and Kaku are off on their own just having a cup of tea. And Kaku's just there, like, how do you start that conversation? Like, so, you were a clone this whole time. Yes, I was. And you were also, like, a vampire. Oh, yeah, that needs to still be explained. Stussy's a vampire now. Like, she has the wings, and she was able to, like, bite people. Like, that needs to be explained. So you're also a vampire. Like, yes, I am. It's just, so that's what they're doing. That's what they're off to right now there, though. No. Although, I would say Stussy might have actually been the one that would be repairing the Vegapunks. Like, if Stussy she might have been the one that fixed up Edison, because she would have the knowledge of this kind of stuff. And then she'll show up, and I'm sure she'll explain some more stuff about her past and Mads and everything like that at some point. But yeah, she might just be chilling out with Kaku right now. Like, that might be that. I mean, we didn't see her in the room, so, I mean, she might just walk in next time, just like, oh, hey, guys, I had to step out for a second. Hi, everyone. How's everything going with York? He's like, oh, yeah, she sung like a canary. She told us everything. Like, oh, lovely. Okay, good. You know, just like that's how it goes with Stussy, right? But other than that, I think everybody else is accounted for, and then, obviously, we have the big Marine cordon going on downstairs, you know, with Sentomaru and Kizaru, and then all the Vice Admirals are there, and so that's going to be the major, you know, encounter here. But I like the fact that, like, yeah, it wasn't... The traitor thing was a nice little mystery plot line, but Oda didn't overkeep its welcome. You know, he didn't keep it around for, like, the entire arc of just, like, who's the traitor? And we don't find out until the very, very end. It was like, nah, it's a nice little mystery story, but we found out pretty quickly, and now here's the serious major threat. Oh, and also, I keep forgetting, Blackbeard, or at least Blackbeard's ship arrived, too. So it's very possible that while everything else is going on here, you know, Katarina Devon, she might have transformed into somebody. And she might be walking around. Like, Katarina Devon might have been somebody in that last panel. Katarina Devon might have transformed into Kaku or something, right? And so keep that in mind. Lafitte might be about using his hypnotism and whatnot. So keep that in mind, too. I always forget about them. But yeah, Blackbeard's crew is on the island. They're somewhere there, okay? And then Caribou is always lurking. But Caribou, I'm not really sure if Oda has a plan for him, or it's just literally going to be like, I was hiding in a barrel the entire time because I was scared. You know, it might have been that as well. Okay. Well, anyway, yeah, that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know where you think everybody's at right now. And now, moving on to whale facts. I think this is going to be the last episode. We're going to be talking about whale falls. Take it away. Okay, so whale falls are actually very, very fascinating because whales are these massive animals, right? Okay, and the blue whale in particular is the largest animal to have ever existed that we know of. When they die, certain things, like, happen, okay? So sometimes whales will be beached. Sometimes if they're close to shore and the tides come in and they die, they'll get washed ashore, or they'll get washed ashore and then die on the beach, which various methods of getting rid of beached whales have happened before. I think one time they blew it up. They took a bunch of dynamite and just blew the crap out of the thing and got blubber and organs and goo and, like, rotting flesh everywhere. So that's disgusting. A lot of times, though, most of the times, the whales will die in the sea, in the ocean. Now, if the whale is close to shallow waters, like not beached, but in the shallow waters, typically will just be devoured relatively quickly, because that's where a good chunk of marine life lives, like near the surface where there's, like, a lot of sunlight and stuff. So if a whale were to die there, just get devoured pretty quickly and doesn't really have time to, like, create this ecosystem. However, if a whale dies and then falls below 1,000 meters, you know, greater than 1,000 meters down into, like, the abyssal pelagic zone or whatever, gets all the way down, then some interesting stuff will happen, okay? It'll hit the seafloor, and because of the cold temperatures down there, the decomposition rate will actually be very slowed. And this creates essentially a stepping stone of evolution, because if it lands in an area on the ocean floor where there's not a lot of sunlight, so there's not going to be like, I mean, there's life down there, but not as much. But then all of a sudden, boom, this massive source of nutrients and various minerals and various elements just shows up out of nowhere, particularly carbon. So the amount of carbon inside of a standard whale on average is like 2 tons. 2 tons of carbon. Now, on the ocean floor, in like a certain area, like a particular hectare, there might only be like the amount of carbon introduced would be like 100 or 200 years worth of carbon in this area naturally. So that's going to change some things. That's going to cause like evolutionary stepping stones on certain plants. Things are going to be able to happen there that wouldn't have normally happened without that whale falling there, okay? So there's 4 stages of whale falls. The first stage is as it's falling down, it's going to be devoured by scavengers. Even in the deep sea, there are still scavengers like hagfish and sleeper sharks, okay? And there's other animals as well, like various octopi, prawns, shrimp, lobsters, squat lobsters, squat lobsters, do-do-do-do-do-do-do, squat lobsters, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. This is what they look like, do-do-do-do. They are squat lobsters, do-do-do-do. And so there's that. Also sea cucumbers, you know, so they'll be like devouring the thing a little bit as it goes down. And this period could last anywhere from a couple of months to 1.5 years. It lands, and it's like its initial flesh is kind of devoured. The second stage is when various colonial like bacteria and things, they kind of like take residence in the bones or in the surrounding carcass of this thing. They're not just feeding off of it, they begin to live there and like propagate. This can last upwards of, I think, a couple years. Then we have the phase 3, which is where bacteria begins to just like spread over its bones, and that because there's these big blankets of bacteria, that also provides a lot of food for mussels and clams. Okay, so there's just big bacterial mats where they're feeding off the bones and all the different nutrients from the bones, and this could last upwards of 50 to 100 years from the process of how much material there is to break down, okay? And so that can happen, and that provides food for mussels and clams. There's just like this little ecosystem is created down there. And then finally we have the 4th stage, where after pretty much most of the nutrients have been stripped clean, you still have the bones, you still have the raw minerals that these things are made out of, which provide a firm area for various filter feeders like sea sponges. So like a sea sponge or a sea star or something will like latch onto the bones as like a firm surface and will just filter feed there. So even once all of the nutrients are effectively removed from this thing and you just have the raw minerals of the bones and nothing else, you still have an area that is a hotbed for various filter feeders, okay? And like suspension feeders and stuff like that. It's actually a pretty cool thing. So yeah, that's whale facts for you. I hope you guys enjoyed. Fascinating animals. And now we're going to be moving on to the final stretch. The last 3 animal facts. Moving on to the letter X. Oh boy, this is going to be a tricky one. Letter X. Let me know on any recommendations you have on an animal starting with the letter X. But yeah, we'll move on to that next time. Thanks for watching. TechEgg signing out. Later, everyone.